caught my husband, Adam Stone, kissing his female secretary at the office, right in front of me. Without missing a beat, I reported his cheating. Even a dog would turn up its nose at a man like that. That very night, I had people pack his luggage and throw it out the door. And I changed the front door lock while I was at it. As for his secretary, she used to act all passive-aggressive toward me because Adam backed her up. Now that Adam can't even protect himself, why on earth would I keep indulging her? I called the HR manager and said, she can resign or be fired, her choice. Resigning means she can leave properly. Getting fired means the reason goes on her record. Even an idiot knows which one to pick. Adam couldn't get into the house and raged over the phone. Olivia West, I've never seen a woman as vicious as you. I'm divorcing you. I answered in a wounded tone. Oh, I'm so scared. Make sure you keep your word, okay? And whoever ignores the other first is a dog. We set the meeting at a law firm. Adam and I were teenage sweethearts and also business partners. There's a mountain of assets, and you can't sort it out without a few lawyers. The moment he saw me, Adam's eyes blazed. He'd built everything from scratch. In public and in private, everyone calls him Mr. Stone, and the board relies on him to make money. People are usually very polite to him. But that public self-criticism yesterday, he lost all face. Nothing to discuss, he said. We divorce and split the assets, straight up. He put on that icy, superior look, chin tilted high, staring down his nose at me. I kindly reminded him, hey, your nose hair is showing. Adam froze, then burst out, Olivia West. I looked completely innocent. What, I can't even tell the truth during a divorce. Besides, who told you to lift your head that high? How else would I have seen it? His chest kept heaving as he forced his temper down, and then he dumped his anger on his lawyer. Move it. I don't want this woman carrying the title of my wife for another second. His lawyer was about to speak, but I cut in first. I want 70% of the assets. I don't want stocks. I don't want funds. I don't want cars. And I don't want any of the shares under your name. Just cash. If the cash isn't enough, real estate will do. Before the lawyer could get a word out, Adam gave a cold laugh. Olivia West, you're insane. Look at what you did, reporting me to the board, and you still have the nerve to ask for 70%. Why wouldn't I? I said earnestly. What I reported to the board was exactly your infidelity, wasn't it? Adam choked on that, his face flushing scarlet. His lawyer jumped in at once. Miss West, what evidence do you have to prove my client cheated? And don't say you secretly filmed anything. Any video recorded without my client's consent has no legal effect. If it leaks, I'll pursue your legal liability on his behalf. Adam caught his breath and looked at me icily. Hear that, Olivia? Study the law sometime. I was even more serious than the two of them. Adam, counselor, what nonsense. I'm a law-abiding citizen. Why would I secretly record anyone? If there's any recording, it would be from the surveillance cameras. I gave Adam a slow once-over. A public conference room, Mr. Stone? Nice choice. His face, which had just started to calm, flared red again, and he let out a furious roar. His lawyer hurried to restrain him and said, all business. It's best you didn't record anything, Miss West. Company surveillance footage is strictly prohibited from being released, which means Miss West has no other evidence to prove my client, Mr. Stone, cheated. Who says I don't? I shot back. Of course I do. I pulled 2 crumpled sheets from my bag and set them on the coffee table between us. With sincere politeness, I asked Adam and his lawyer, would the board's public self-criticism report count as valid evidence? In an instant, both of their faces changed. I looked perfectly earnest, humbly seeking guidance, as sincere as could be. The board report spells it out. Adam kissed her in the conference room. The secretary claimed it was just a kiss. Please, how could it have been only a kiss? If there hadn't been something more, would the board have agreed to my demand that Adam make a public self-criticism? The public conference room was equipped with several expensive devices, and the surveillance cameras ran 24/7. When they've been on that long, people forget they're even there. And when passion takes over, who's thinking about unblinking machines watching every move? I took the footage straight to the board and made it clear. If they didn't handle this internally, I'd take it to the media. Sure, internal surveillance footage isn't supposed to be leaked, but there are hundreds, if not thousands, of ways to get it out. For a public figure like Adam, I wouldn't even need to say much. Just letting the rumor slip would be enough for those tabloid reporters to find a way to get the evidence themselves. And they'd dig up the whole backstory, add their speculations, and make it even more detailed, thorough, and vivid than the actual footage. The company was in a critical stage, about to go public. The board wouldn't dare let the media get wind of something like this. So of course they could only agree to have Adam do an internal self-criticism. But I hadn't stirred up such a big mess just because I enjoyed the drama. I was one of the company's shareholders. Obviously, I'd get a copy of the report. And even if they didn't send it to me, you think I wouldn't ask for it myself? In black and white, with his own signature, it was Adam admitting to inappropriate behavior in the workplace. Adam's breath was coming hard, and his glare was so vicious you'd think he wanted to devour me. But was I scared? Even if I was, I'd still report him. A cheating man, why keep him around like a pet for the holidays? Maybe he hadn't expected me to have such solid evidence, because he and his lawyer huddled together, whispering for quite a while. I was so bored I started yawning. What was there to discuss? Did they think a little side conversation could erase all the disgusting things he'd done? As long as I had that report in my hand, his fault during the marriage was set in stone. I had the moral high ground. What was there to fear? After a while, the two of them came back. The lawyer said, "Miss West, Mr. Watts Stone is willing to make some concessions in light of your over 10 years of marriage. He's willing to split the assets 60-40, with you getting 60%. I almost laughed. What did they think this was, a farmer's market where you haggle over a few cents? I stood up right then. Not discussing this anymore. Let's go to court and let the judge decide. The lawyer started preparing the petition, and my own lawyer, finally showing a shred of presence, quickly answered, yes, yes, several times, flipped open his laptop, and started working right on the spot. No need, Adam barked. Oh, I knew him well. He valued his pride more than his life. The mighty Mr. Stone, dragged into court by his wife for divorce because of infidelity, with the strongest evidence being his own handwritten self-criticism, for him, that humiliation would be worse than death. Adam's face darkened to the color of liver as he ground out, "Fine. We'll do what you said, 70-30, you get 70. I shook my finger side to side. No, that was the earlier price. Now it's 80-20. I get the 80. Olivia West. Adam roared. I gave him a look of pure disdain. I'd fought alongside Adam for years in business. I've seen partners raise their asking price 100 times if I've seen it once. So why was it such a shock when I did it? He looked like he'd never seen the world before. I frowned. You don't agree? Fine, I'll let the court decide. Lawyer, is that petition ready yet? Almost. Just a few more words to change, my lawyer replied. The man was good, just a few minutes and the petition was basically done. I'd have to pay him extra later. Seeing that I looked ready to march to court any second, Adam finally ground out through clenched teeth. Fine, no court. We'll do it your way. 80-20. No stocks, no funds, no cars, and none of my company's shares. Just cash and real estate. I quickly added, Adam's veins looked like they were about to burst, but he still ground his teeth and nodded. Fine. I immediately called my lawyer over to bring the contract. My lawyer jogged over and set a copy on the coffee table. While he was laying it out, I couldn't resist taking a jab at Adam. See, if you'd agreed this quickly earlier, think how much time we could have saved. I could have been having afternoon tea with Mrs. Chen instead of wasting it here. Adam ignored me completely, keeping his head down as he read the contract. But when his eyes landed on the percentage split, he suddenly looked up, little sparks of fury dancing in his gaze. Olivia, you planned this all along. It says 80-20 in black and white. When your lawyer opened his laptop earlier, he didn't even use the printer. This contract was clearly prepared in advance. Oh, oops, guess I'd been a little careless letting him notice that. I gave a couple of awkward laughs. Well, I figured you'd be petty enough to drag things out. But hey, this works out perfectly. If you'd agreed to 70-30 from the start, I would have had to print a new one. What a waste of paper. I'm a public-spirited, eco-friendly citizen, you know. With the signed agreement in hand, Adam and I headed straight to the Civil Affairs Bureau to file for divorce. The entire process took less than 15 minutes. and we walked out, going in opposite directions without so much as a glance at each other. What was there to look at? He thought I was ruthless. I thought he was filthy. Mutual disgust. A month later, our divorce certificate came through, just in time for the grand opening of my new store. 2 happy events at once. How could I not celebrate? I went all out. Dragon and lion dances, street dance flash mobs, anything to drive away bad luck, blending east and west for maximum festivity. My store was a fitness apparel and equipment shop, and the highlight of the event was the runway show. Fit, sunny young men and women strutted in activewear, running gear, and yoga outfits, doing upbeat aerobics or flexing toned muscles, instantly pushing the atmosphere to a peak. The event was a success, and I knew there'd be a rush of customers soon. Pair that with the promotions, and the opening would be a hit. I was happily calculating today's potential earnings when a sudden cold gust hit me. I instinctively stepped aside just as a figure stumbled past me, nearly face-planting. The woman missed slapping me, steadied herself, then spun around and yelled, "Olivia West, how dare you dodge?" Well, what a coincidence. It was Adam's mother. "Mrs. Stone, do you work out too?" I greeted her warmly, then sincerely added, "Though I think you might want to get your cerebellum checked at the hospital first. You seem unsteady on your feet." Her face went pale with anger, and she jabbed a finger at me. "You shameless woman. Our Adam supported you for 8 years, and you still took so much money from him. Aren't you embarrassed?" "Why would I be?" I replied, all sincerity. "Adam swore that if he ever cheated, he'd leave with nothing. I didn't even take everything. I left him 20%. I'm being downright generous. Or are you worried Adam's oath won't come true and he'll escape karma? Should I help him fulfill it and take the rest too?" Mrs. Stone's body trembled so hard she looked like she had Parkinson's, and for a second I worried she'd collapse on the spot and try to pin it on me. But, just like I remembered, she was as tough as a cockroach that refused to die. Not only did she stay on her feet, she actually lunged at me to hit me. But me? I'm not that easy to hit. This was a fitness store. If there's one thing I'm not short of, it's tall, muscular young guys. The moment she came at me, 2 of them stepped in front of me, flexing their well-built chests and biceps. Realizing she couldn't get to me, Mrs. Stone switched tactics. She kicked over the big cartoon statue in front of my store, and as the sound of shattering filled the air, she plopped herself down on the ground, wailing at the top of her lungs. Oh, why am I so unlucky? She's the most shameless daughter-in-law alive. My son supported her for 8 years, and she doesn't appreciate him at all. She took so much of his money, refuses to be a proper wife or mother, doesn't take care of him, runs around showing her face everywhere, and then she uses his money to keep some pretty boy on the side. Wow, now that was juicy. If this were in a tabloid, it'd hit the headlines instantly. I pulled out my phone. "Hello, Gossip Weekly? I've got a big scoop for you. Adam Stone's mother is here at New Era Plaza, shouting in public, and the stuff she's saying is explosive. You'd better get here fast." Mrs. Stone stopped mid-howl the moment she heard that. I quickly encouraged her. "Go on, keep going. The reporters will be here in 5 minutes tops." "Olivia West, you nasty little brat, you won't come to a good end," she spat, scrambling up from the ground. She cursed me the whole time, then bolted like she had turbo boosters. At that speed, you'd never believe she'd been stumbling around earlier from supposed balance problems. I shook my head, marveling at the miracle. This illness came and went faster than the weather. One moment she couldn't walk straight, the next she was sprinting. Right after she left, the outdoor event wrapped up, and waves of customers began pouring into the store. The lawyer who'd come to support me gave me a thumbs up. "Miss West, your timing was perfect. Not a dent in your business." I directed my staff to clean up the shattered statue while replying modestly, "Just average." He then praised my earlier move. "That old lady's going to think twice next time." I immediately shook my head in mock seriousness. I always respect the elderly and care for the young. How could I ever teach a lesson to a senior? Of course, if a senior breaks the law, that's another matter. We have to uphold the dignity of the law. Then I took out my phone and dialed 110. "Officer Way, I need to file a report." At the police station, Adam and I sat across from each other, while 2 officers sat on the other side of the desk. "You 2 talk it over first," one of them said. Adam fought to keep his anger in check. Olivia, do you really hate my mother this much? She's an old woman. I looked at him like he'd grown another head. What does her age have to do with me? Being old doesn't give you the right to break things and not pay for them. She's my mother, he said through clenched teeth. Exactly, I replied. That's why I called you here to accompany her. Honestly, I was starting to think Adam's IQ had dropped since our divorce. He couldn't even grasp something this simple. He gave me a look like I was impossible to reason with. She just accidentally knocked over your cheap glass statue, and you had to drag her to the police station over it? It's crystal, I corrected firmly. Natural crystal, a whole uncut piece, rare and valuable. Then I turned to the officers. I've already provided the store's surveillance footage. You saw it yourselves. She deliberately kicked it over, didn't she? The officer nodded. Yes, the footage clearly shows Huang Shuying intentionally damaging property. Otherwise, we wouldn't have called you in. Adam didn't dare argue with the police, so he redirected his anger toward me. It's just a glass statue. How much could it possibly be worth? I'll pay you for it. I said it's crystal, I reminded him again, annoyed, and then I named the loss. It's not much, just 20 million. Adam's eyes bulged. Olivia, are you out of your mind? Not even a ton of crystal is worth that much. But mine's a single whole piece, I explained seriously, and handcrafted by a master, one of a kind. Now tell me, is it worth that price or not? As I spoke, I pulled out a copy of the receipt and slid it to the center of the table. It's art. There's no fixed price. Think about those jade carvings or paintings that get a few strokes and then sell for sky-high amounts. Adam snatched the receipt copy, crumpling it in his fist until the paper rustled loudly. His voice came out between his teeth. Olivia West, you're insane. You left something worth 20 million sitting outside your store like it was nothing? I stared at him, baffled. Since when do I need your permission to decide where to put my things? And really, it was kind of ironic. He'd been the one who bought it for me back at 8 o'clock that morning. I had only planned to keep the statue at my store entrance for a single day to draw in some attention. I'd even built a small, tiered barrier pool around it so that normal people couldn't get near. But Mrs. Stone, full of temper, just had to show off her kicking skills and send her foot flying at it. She brought this on herself. Who else could she blame? The officer reminded Adam, 20 million is considered a huge amount. This already constitutes the crime of intentionally destroying company property. Since the suspect couldn't properly recognize the item's value, the subjective malice isn't considered severe. And given that you were related before, we've called you here to try to reach a settlement. If you can agree on compensation, we can process this as a criminal reconciliation, and your mother won't be held legally responsible. If no agreement is reached, it will proceed as a criminal case. The police patiently explained the law to Adam and even tried to persuade him. Think carefully. Your mother was clearly in the wrong here. Paying for the damage is the right thing to do. And considering her age, you wouldn't want her spending several years in prison. Adam's face was dark as iron, his glare fixed on me. I don't have that kind of money. I believed him. After all, 80% of it had gone to me. But what did that have to do with me? I stood up and gave the officers a polite bow. I'll leave the rest to you. The crime of intentionally damaging company property is a public prosecution case. From here on, it's all for the prosecutors and the courts, nothing to do with me. I turned to leave. Wait. Adam called after me, breathing hard. I'll get you the money, just do the reconciliation paperwork first. I turned back without the slightest politeness. Transfer the money first, or there's nothing to talk about. What a joke. He wasn't my anything anymore. Why should I make things easy for him? Adam's eyes went bloodshot, like he wanted to eat me alive. He stared me down for a good 10 seconds before turning to make a phone call. Half an hour later, 20 million hit my account. I quickly completed the reconciliation process. The officers released Mrs. Stone from temporary holding. In just a few hours, the old woman looked like she'd aged 10 years. The moment she stepped out, she threw herself at Adam, wailing so loudly it could shake the roof. Adam's face was full of pain and concern. Since we'd once been family, I figured I ought to say a few comforting words. So I said sincerely, Mrs. Stone, you're not young anymore. Why get yourself so worked up? Don't ever do something like this again. Impulse is the devil." It was clearly meant as comfort, yet somehow my words made her cry even harder and curse louder. I sighed. Was she getting senile? She couldn't even tell who was good or bad anymore. With that 20 million, I happily took off for a trip out of town. Honestly, whoever bought that statue would understand. It was huge, ridiculously expensive, and took up way too much space. I'd regretted buying it the moment it arrived. I'd only ordered it because watching Adam's disgusting behavior in his office that day had put me in such a foul mood. It was an impulse buy I'd been wanting to get rid of, but couldn't find anyone willing to take it off my hands. Now, selling it back to Adam at the original price? Of course I was thrilled. Whoever caused my impulse spending could clean up the mess. Now that's a perfect closed loop. When I got back from my trip, a familiar face walked into my store. The moment I saw Mr. Stone, I almost thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. I had never met a man more hypocritical. Back when Adam was starting his business, he praised me as capable and said I could share hardships with Adam. After Adam's success, suddenly I was not a proper wife, running around in public too much. For a while, both he and Mrs. Stone wouldn't stop lecturing me about men handle the outside, women handle the inside, and how Adam worked all day only to come home without a hot meal. I nearly laughed in their faces. I was an executive too. Adam worked all day, but didn't I? And the live-in housekeeper I'd hired cooked 6 dishes and a soup every meal. Were they blind not to see it? Still, watching Adam worn out and stuck between me and his parents every day, I did feel some sympathy. So I simply withdrew from the company, stepped down from my executive position, and kept only my shares. But I had no interest in sitting idle, so I partnered with someone to open a brand-name clothing store. On opening day, just like with my current fitness shop, I organized a runway show. All the male models on stage were tall, long-legged, and handsome. Just when the event was at its peak, Mr. Stone suddenly appeared, stormed onto the stage, and pointed at my nose, shouting that I was shameless for showing my face in public, tangled up with strange men. He even said my business partner in the store wasn't a good person and was leading me down the wrong path. I still remember my partner's expression: shock, anger, complete incomprehension. The way they looked at me was full of sympathy and pity, as if they couldn't imagine how I'd ended up with a mother-in-law like that. I pulled out of that partnership the very next day. Under Mr. Stone's smug gaze, I returned to family life. From then on, whenever I wanted to work, he would use the same tactics to sabotage me, until I stopped trying to develop my own career at all. Instead, I spent my days drinking tea, shopping, and doing beauty treatments with the wives of Adam's business partners. Only then did Mrs. Stone finally stop her meddling, proudly saying, "Now this is what a woman should be." A housewife like her didn't have that kind of scheming. Mr. Stone was the one pulling the strings from behind. Ever since I'd fully become a stay-at-home wife, the old man had never looked at me the same way again. He carried himself with such arrogance, as if the man who once smiled at me, praised me for being capable and smart, and said I was a help to Adam, had never existed. So for someone like him to lower himself to come see me now, I couldn't help but be surprised. "Here to work out, sir?" I greeted warmly. A guest is a guest, after all. His face froze, and he even forgot what he'd come to say. "Sir?" he repeated in disbelief. This was a man who'd once taught in the village, the kind who would smack students' palms with a ruler. He didn't actually know much, but he fancied himself refined. Every day he fiddled with books and tea, and he lived for people respectfully calling him teacher or Mr. Stone Sr. Out of courtesy to Adam, others indulged him. Back when I was married, I'd call him Dad. Now that we were divorced, he probably assumed I'd still give him the same formal respect and call him Mr. Stone. Never in his life would he have guessed that the first words out of my mouth would be "sir," grinding his carefully maintained cultured image straight into the dirt. "Well, you are at an age where I should show respect for my elders," I explained warmly. "Of course I should call you sir." Then I added helpfully, "Sir, starting fitness training at your age might be a little late. Don't waste your money, just go home and join a public square dance group." I made sure to call him sir with every sentence. His face went stiff enough to snap chopsticks. He looked down on square dancing seniors more than anyone, and here I was telling him to go join them. He shot me a vicious glare, took a few deep breaths, and finally forced out, "Olivia, a woman holding company shares is useless. Transfer them to Adam." I had to admit, Mr. Stone's maneuvering was on another level compared to Mrs. Stone's. Even when furious, he didn't forget the real reason he'd come. No wonder Mrs. Stone had always been the one on the front lines, while he schemed in the back. Over the years, he'd always spoken to me in an imperious tone, as if giving orders. Today was no different. Straight to the point, issuing commands. But who exactly did this old man think he was? As it happened, I was thinking of getting rid of those shares, so I nodded in agreement. "You're right," I said earnestly. What he didn't know was that while our end goals matched, my way of achieving it might not be what he had in mind. Apparently, he didn't consider that a possibility. Pleased with my attitude, he even seemed less bothered by my constant "sir," his face easing slightly. He nodded with the air of a man pleased with himself. "At least you're sensible. I'll have Adam contact you." With his hands clasped behind his back, he left. The moment he was gone, I messaged the largest company shareholders in my contacts. "Shares for sale. First come, first served." By the time Adam got the news, I'd already spoken to several interested buyers. He came to me in a fury. "Olivia, what do you think you're doing?" I blinked innocently. "Selling shares, what else could it mean?" "You told my dad you'd transfer them to me for free." He snapped. "Now you're reaching out to others. What's that supposed to mean?" I held a good amount of stock, and they were all original shares. The company was already in the process of going public. Those shares of mine carried enough weight to heavily influence control of the company. I stared at Adam in disbelief. "Adam, have you lost your mind? I only said I didn't want the shares. What part of that meant I was giving them to you? And for free?" I tried to reason with him patiently. "Adam, are you so broke you can't even afford to eat? Malnourished to the point of brain atrophy? Who dreams of getting original shares for nothing? You'd better see a doctor. Don't worry about the cost. Out of respect for our former marriage, I'll pay for it." The vein in Adam's forehead twitched as he glared at me, trying to figure out whether I was serious or just trying to infuriate him. But when he saw that, in the short span of 20 minutes, at least 5 shareholders had called me to discuss buying my shares, he finally lost his composure. Grinding his teeth, he said, "I can buy those shares too." "Of course you can," I said with a bright smile. "You're a shareholder. Why wouldn't you be able to buy them? You should have said so earlier. Now, let's talk price." The company was in its final stages before going public, which meant original shares were at peak value. Ever since I'd put them up for sale, I'd been flooded with calls from shareholders, investors, and last-minute speculators hoping to get in. After several rounds of negotiations, the price had reached a very comfortable level. If Adam wanted my shares, he'd have to offer more than anyone else. The bargaining was tedious, but I had only one rule: highest bidder wins. In the end, Adam's bloodshot eyes gave me a number I was satisfied with, and I agreed, smiling sweetly, to sell them to him. This company was his baby, built from scratch through Angel A and B rounds, now on the verge of going public. There was no way he'd let his life's work slip away. He'd sell the shirt off his back if that's what it took. As always, my rule was money first, then the transfer contract. I didn't know where Adam scraped the funds from, but when he handed me the check, he gripped one end so tightly I thought it might tear. "Olivia, we were married once. Do you really have to be this ruthless?" I frowned in confusion. "What's ruthless about a normal business deal? You pay, I sell shares." "My dad already went to see you," he said angrily, as if his father's visit was some great honor I'd been given. "Oh, right." I pretended to suddenly remember. "If you hadn't mentioned it, I would have forgotten to tell you. Make sure those creepy old busybodies in your family stay far away from me. You know I'm impulsive. When someone pushes me, I act without thinking. Just like these shares." I yanked the check from his hand and waved it in front of him. "You'd be out all this money for nothing. Doesn't that hurt? Let this be a lesson. Don't send them to me again." With that, I blew him a kiss, swayed my hips, and headed for the door. As if I were some pushover. That useless old man dared to show up at my place and order me around? Back when I was married, I'd let things slide for Adam's sake. But now? Who did he think he was? Wasn't he after my shares? Well, I'd given them to him. He should be satisfied. Thinking of that, I stopped and turned back with a helpful reminder. Oh, Adam, say hello to your dad for me, and don't forget to tell him you only got those shares thanks to him. Once I left the company, I called my lawyer and asked him to find out exactly where Adam's money had come from. My lawyer's good. Less than 30 minutes later, he called back. Miss West, Mr. Stone sold an apartment. He paid for it himself, but it was under Miss Megan Zhao's name, so it wasn't part of the divorce property division. I knew it, I said, hanging up. Adam was the type to hide assets. I never believed he didn't have anything tucked away. But this time he'd probably drained himself dry. Those original shares were worth tens of millions, about the same as a prime downtown apartment. Then, annoyingly, I realized something. Even all those shares together weren't worth as much as that giant crystal statue. Art, right? Fortunately, Mrs. Stone had bought it back. Thinking about that, I almost felt the urge to buy another one just to wave it under her nose. But then again, maybe she'd learned her lesson. She might not be so impulsive next time. I gave up on the idea. Should have known better than to tell that old lady, impulse is the devil. Devil? She was no devil, more like an angel. A glittering, money-covered angel. Once the shares were transferred, my ties with Adam were completely severed. There was no connection left, neither with him nor with his company. My fitness equipment store was settling into a steady rhythm and didn't require my constant supervision anymore. With more free time, I started meeting Mrs. Chen for tea, meals, chats, and gossip. And it wasn't just Mrs. Chen, there were plenty of other wives of company presidents. Back when Mr. Stone manipulated things so I couldn't work, he'd only allow me to kill time shopping and going for beauty treatments with the ladies' circle. But I'm not the type to sit idle. If I couldn't make money, I could at least spend it, right? So I gathered these ladies together and founded a charity foundation with a beautiful name, Glamour Unlimited. We weren't just beautiful and gracious. The name suited us perfectly. The foundation focused on helping underprivileged students, supporting underdeveloped regions, and in times of major disaster, donating money and supplies. It was meaningful work. And with receipts, companies could use it for tax deductions. So why wouldn't they love it? Adam and his business friends were more than satisfied with what our foundation was doing. I managed it entirely, and even after the divorce, my network didn't fall apart. I still kept regular restroom, close contact with the other ladies. Before long, it was time for the monthly meeting, as usual, hosted at Mrs. Chen's high-end club. Meeting was just the formal label, truthfully. It was more of a small gathering, where gossip far outweighed business. Each month, there were always newcomers wanting to join, and this time was no exception. After the official talk, Mrs. Chen and I had some personal matters to discuss, so we arrived about 10 minutes late to the luncheon. When we walked into the restaurant, we saw the new hopefuls had already arrived. They weren't allowed into the actual meeting yet, just given a first introduction at lunch. Naturally, as newcomers, they huddled together. As we passed by, I overheard one of them asking, "Zhao Zhao, is it true you and Mr. Stone have moved into a rental?" That name and that surname sounded all too familiar. I turned my head, and sure enough, it was Adam's former secretary, the one I'd seen in that office surveillance footage. Honestly, I didn't remember her face all that well. What stuck in my memory was her figure, because when you've been confronted with that much blinding white flesh, it stays with you for days. Even now, looking at her, I had the illusion she wasn't wearing clothes. When she first heard the question, Megan Zhao's expression was sour. But the moment she saw me, her chin tilted up, and her voice rose theatrically. Yes, I did sell my apartment to help our Adam through a crisis, but it's only temporary. With Adam's ability, once the company goes public, he'll earn it all back. What's his is bound to be his sooner or later. Adam's company did hold a decent position in the industry, and the IPO was public knowledge. The women around her started flattering her. "Zhao Zhao, you're so wonderful to stand by Mr. Stone through hard times. He's lucky to have you." Across the crowd, Megan fixed her gaze on me, her words dripping with the politeness of a fake Tea Party queen. A person should have a conscience. I, for one, would never leave Adam during his lowest point. Not like some people. After being supported in luxury for 7 or 8 years, they end the marriage by digging 3 feet into the ground, taking even the last drop of Adam's hard-earned money. The target of her words couldn't have been clearer. Some of the women froze, a few quietly stepped back, but others spoke up in loud agreement, while also following Megan's gaze straight to me. Back when Adam was still around, my position as head of the foundation had never been questioned. But now that we were divorced, even though I still had money, in their eyes I was no longer part of their circle. Sitting in the leader's seat of the foundation now seemed, to them, undeserved. I just smiled, not bothering to say anything, and tugged on Mrs. Chen's arm to move forward, but she didn't budge. Instead, she went on the offensive, grabbing a glass and hurling it toward Megan. The crystal glass exploded on the floor at Megan's feet. To me now, crystal was practically a synonym for expensive, so even though it was just a glass, I still winced. Megan flinched hard, startled. Mrs. Chen pointed straight at her. "You sold a house? You're a little girl who graduated college less than 2 years ago. Where'd you get over 10 million to buy a villa? Don't you know in your own heart whose money paid for it? I've seen shameless before, but not this shameless. Playing the mistress and still acting like it's some badge of honor. Does Adam even know you've been hiding marital assets for him?" Those 3 lines landed harder and harder, and by the last one, Megan's face had gone completely white. She'd been so intent on smearing me, trying to paint me as some ungrateful leech who lived off Adam's back and then bled him dry after divorce, that she'd forgotten not to blurt out something this explosive. Mrs. Chen waved for her club manager. "That one. And those few over there. Print their photos, stick them on the front door, make sure everyone knows who they are. None of them are allowed to step foot in my club again. And get these eyesores out of here right now." Both Mrs. Chen and her husband were career-driven, each running their own companies and holding high standing in the industry. Once she spoke, Megan and the others panicked. They wanted to beg for mercy but couldn't swallow their pride. That brief hesitation was all it took for the manager, wearing a professional but fake smile, to usher them out without ceremony. Mrs. Chen still wasn't satisfied. "I can't stand their kind," she muttered. By coincidence, or maybe not, all the women she'd expelled were mistresses, or even 3rd, 4th, or 5th wheels who'd clawed their way into position. As they say, like attracts like, even rotten fish have their own pond. I linked arms with Mrs. Chen, laughing so hard my shoulders shook. "Sis, you really are my ultimate mouthpiece." Mrs. Chen laughed too, then called over to the rest of the ladies. "Come on, let's enjoy ourselves." At the party, I held back on drinking, just a few sips, keeping my head clear. Once it ended, I called my lawyer. "Submit all the materials you dug up before to the board. Mrs. Chen might be my mouthpiece, but revenge, that's something I have to handle personally." A week later, Adam called me. "Olivia, was it you who reported? I was soaking in an aromatic oil bath, so relaxed that all my pores felt open, and for a moment I didn't even know what he was talking about. It took me a few seconds to remember, and then my heart leapt with glee." "Which thing are you talking about?" "The company's biggest supplier. The legal owner is your secretary's mother." Adam's voice was shaking with fury. "It was you." Yes, it was me," I admitted without hesitation. "Well, pretty good job, right?" Adam's company was huge, naturally relying on many suppliers. And he really did love Megan. 2 years ago, when she was still just an intern, he'd had her set up a company under her mother's name and handed over the most profitable piece of business to it. Megan's family hadn't produced a single business person in 3 generations, not even a street vendor. What kind of company could she possibly run? It was nothing but a shell, farming out all the work to subcontractors. And yet they still quoted Adam's company at an inflated price. Adam had full authority to sign off on expenditures, and for this budget line, he never even glanced at it before approving. When reporting to the board, he would take advantage of their lack of familiarity with the actual business to package it as normal market pricing. Since Adam handled most of the operations and the company's overall profits and dividends looked good, the board had never noticed anything unusual. Back when he paid for that crystal statue, I'd thought it was perfectly normal that he could produce 20 million. But being able to hand it over in under half an hour without blinking, that was something worth thinking about. That day, right after I left the police station, I had my lawyer dig into things. Sure enough, we found the problem. Originally, if Adam had kept operations at their original scale, it wouldn't have been a big deal. But things had changed. Adam was short on cash now. Desperate to bring money in, his appetite had grown. In the past few months, the money funneled through Megan's mother's company had already begun affecting the company's overall profits. Under normal circumstances, this wouldn't have been such a big deal. Considering Adam's years at the helm, the board might have given him a warning and told him not to do it again. As for the money he'd taken, they probably would have let him keep it. But now, the company was at the critical stage of preparing for its IPO. A major operational loophole like this? The board couldn't turn a blind eye. They forced Adam to cough up every cent he'd swallowed in recent months. Even through the phone, I could hear his rough, uneven breathing. It had clearly hit him where it hurt most. But I have to admit, in some ways Adam was a lot like his father. Even in this state, he managed to rein himself in, smother his rage, and say, "Olivia, I never treated you badly. Why would you do this?" "Didn't treat me badly," I said. "Everything I have now, I fought for myself. If I'd been the least bit weak, I'd be on the streets by now, wouldn't I?" I put on my most aggrieved tone. "Adam, I told you before, I'm timid and impulsive. When people push me, I don't think straight. It's your fault for not watching who you keep around, letting those creepy hangers-on come scare me." "Olivia," Adam roared. "Oh, I'm terrified," I said, patting my chest and taking a sip of wine that had cost me tens of thousands. A few seconds later, he'd cooled enough to speak again, his voice icy. "Olivia, don't regret this." He made sure I understood what that meant soon enough. The IPO press conference for New Vision Tech was a massive affair, the final step before going public. By this stage, listing was practically a sure thing. As a former founding member, I was invited to the post-event cocktail party. The shareholders were glowing, and it only made me look more short-sighted to them. If I hadn't broken things off so bitterly with Adam, or acted on impulse to sell my shares, my assets would have multiplied several times over in no time. Adam strode over to me, head held high, chest puffed, radiating self-satisfaction. "Olivia, do you regret it?" he asked, in the tone of someone who'd been saving that line for ages. He was already taller than me, and with his chin tipped up like that, I had to crane my neck to look at him. So, once again, I helpfully reminded him, "Your nose hair is showing." Around us, people pretended to chat while straining their ears for drama. Everyone wanted to know what kind of fireworks the two of us would set off this time. But no one could have guessed it would be that line. There was a beat of silence, then the whole place burst out laughing. Adam's face went so dark it was nearly black. This man, if there's one thing I know, it's that he lives for saving face. He'd come here determined to shine, and now the only thing anyone would remember was his nose hair. He glared at me. "Olivia, how can you be so low class now?" I looked innocent. "Mr. Stone, calling out nose hair as low class? I was just telling the truth. You're the one who lifted your head that high. How else would I have seen it?" Adam finally realized I wasn't going to discuss anything but his nose hair, and, face like stone, he stalked off in fury. The air felt cleaner the moment he was gone. But I didn't even have time to take a full breath before someone clamped onto me so hard I nearly lost it. "Miss West, thank you for letting me have such a wonderful man as Adam," a woman in heavy makeup said, standing before me with a look of smug satisfaction while pretending to be demure. "Since you don't cherish Adam, I'll enjoy the blessings on your behalf," she added sweetly. I racked my brain but couldn't figure out who this human makeup palette in front of me was, or why she was acting like we were old friends. So I kept my tone polite and asked, "And you are?" The woman across from me suddenly froze, her expression shifting a dozen times in just a few seconds, so many in fact that I had to admire her range. She finally settled on one, anger, laced with humiliation. "Olivia," she snapped, "you think pretending not to know me is going to humiliate me? Let me tell you, I, Megan, am going to have Adam no matter what." The moment her name hit my ears, I finally remembered who she was. I pointed at her. "Oh, you're that chunk of marbled pork from the video." Megan had been wearing a smug smile when she saw I recognized her, but it froze instantly after that line. I'm a polite person by nature, so I quickly apologized. Sorry. In the video, there was just all that white, jiggling flesh. I couldn't remember the face. If you'd worn a bit less today, I would have recognized you right away. Who would have thought you'd be so covered up this time? The people lingering to watch the show hadn't left yet, and after the whole nose hair incident earlier, this triggered another round of roaring laughter. Megan let out a sharp cry, spun around and bolted, covering her face tightly with both hands. I stared after her, speechless. What was wrong with this woman? Did she have no manners? I was in the middle of apologizing. Who runs away while someone's apologizing? Completely uncivilized. After the gala, nose hair Adam and marbled pork Megan became the latest buzzwords in the social scene, while the talk of New Vision Tech's IPO barely came up at all. Which made sense. Companies go public every day, but nose hair and marbled pork? That kind of high society gossip doesn't happen daily. Days went by, and though Adam's company still had some time before officially going public, his wedding to Megan was set first. He made it high profile and flashy, as if this second marriage, born from an affair, was some grand love story. Not that it had anything to do with me. I hadn't spared him a glance in ages. But he just couldn't resist getting in my face. Our foundation, Glamour Alliance, held an annual charity gala, inviting figures from various industries to donate and celebrate good works. That's when Adam showed up with Megan in tow. He spent a fortune to win a diamond necklace at auction, then publicly clasped it around her neck, declaring with deep affection, "To my beloved." Everyone at the gala turned to look at me. They all knew exactly what history lay between Adam and me, how I'd stood by him step by step from nothing to the fortune he had now. And here he was, doing this in front of everyone. It was basically a public slap across my face. Mrs. Chen was so furious she was ready to march over and confront him, but I grabbed her arm hard. "Olivia, you can stand this? Do you have any pride left?" she demanded. I didn't even lift my head. He just spent $20 million on a chunk of calcium carbonate. What's there for me to be mad about? Calcium carbonate? Mrs. Chen blinked, catching on. That necklace he just won? I nodded. Yep, the guy bidding against him earlier? I arranged that. He couldn't drive the price much higher, so I lined up several others too. I even wrote out pages of tactics. Mrs. Chen stared at me. Aren't you afraid he'll realize and accuse you of fraud, refuse to pay? Now that I took seriously, I put on a grave expression and explained, Mrs. Chen, this is a charity auction. You think you can just back out? If it's that easy to open that door, how would the business survive in the future? How would good deeds continue? If he dares go back on it, I'll have him in prison before he can blink. Mrs. Chen froze for a beat, then laughed so hard she nearly twisted her waist, begging me to rub her stomach because it hurt from laughing. Well done, rotten fish and stinking shrimp should only wear fakes, she said, still giggling. She knew I hadn't lost out, but the others didn't. As the gala ended and I saw guests out, every look I got was filled with pity, as if I'd been wronged terribly. I ignored them. Adam was the last to leave. He sent Megan ahead, then, thinking he looked cool, blocked my path. Olivia, do you regret it? Adam asked. I'm going to marry Megan. I'll give her a grand wedding and shower her with high-profile affection. Everything you never had, I'll give to her. Olivia, do you regret it? I studied him carefully and asked, Do you want me to call Dr. Wu for you? It took him a moment to react, then he growled, Olivia, stop changing the subject. I shook my head and called the hospital. My ex-husband seems to have some kind of mental problem. We're divorced and he still thinks he has to report to me before getting a pet. Adam stormed off, fuming. I hung up and immediately dialed another number. Everything's ready? Then start. Flood all channels, profit doesn't matter, grab the market first, cover losses with the marketing budget. Don't worry, I'll cover it. The day after the gala, a brand new product suddenly hit the market like it had fallen from the sky. Its application scenario overlapped heavily with Adam's company's products, but its performance and convenience were several degrees better. Not only that, the price was dirt cheap, only 2/3 of Adam's product. With those advantages, it took over half the market in no time, with clear momentum to keep growing. Adam's company never saw such a strong competitor coming and had no contingency plan. They scrambled, ultimately resorting to the dumbest strategy, slashing prices. But the competitor had already gathered first-round market data, iterated rapidly, cut costs, and slashed prices again, this time even lower than Adam's production cost. Meanwhile, Adam's price cuts backfired, making customers think his product was cheap in quality. Once that perception stuck, no price increase could reverse it unless they launched a new product fast. But in the last 2 or 3 years, the entire company had been focused on going public, and R&D had fallen far behind. They had nothing new to release. A dying camel is still bigger than a horse. Adam's products had been in the market for years and had a loyal customer base, so they weren't replaced overnight. Even so, anyone with eyes could see the brand and company were in decline. Investors and institutions that had once championed him started to hesitate. The IPO date was delayed again and again. Some even began quietly asking if they could pull out. The collapse came faster than anyone expected. In the middle of it, Adam called me. We agreed to meet in a small, ordinary cafe. In just 10 days, he looked years older. He'd always been at that age, but before, his comfort, status, and self-assurance had hidden it. Now, after this blow, his age showed in every line of his face. It was obvious he hadn't slept in days. The moment he saw me, he rasped, "Was it you?" I nodded. "Yes, the capital behind that competing product is mine." "Why?" His voice cracked as he lowered it to a growl. "Olivia, do you really want to destroy me this badly?" I frowned and tapped the table twice, signaling him to calm down. He pressed his palm to his forehead, speaking in a weary voice. "Olivia, I was wrong. I treated you badly, but why take it out on me like this? Please, let me get through this IPO. Just this once." I sipped my coffee, my voice cold. "Adam, you give yourself too much credit." He looked up. "Stop pretending. You just want revenge, don't you?" I stared at him and, for the first time, felt nothing but boredom. I used to love Adam, the youthful ambition, the unstoppable drive, the eyes always full of hope, and the hunger to explore the future. But somewhere along the way, he'd turned into a stagnant, self-satisfied old man with no spark left. When the first portable card reader came out, I said, the CEO swore up and down it was the best product of the 21st century, that it would cover the whole country. But not long after, QR codes appeared. Do you know what it means to be crushed from above? This is why you and I aren't even in the same realm anymore. Our products may share the same application scenario, but the moment I appear, your path is already cut off. Adam, do you know why a dimensionality reduction strike happens? Because someone is always exploring higher dimensions. 3 dimensions aren't enough, 4, even 5, 6, 10, but some people are perfectly satisfied staying in 2. I toyed with the little spoon in my coffee cup, the coffee swirling endlessly. Adam, you should know, I was never the kind of woman who stayed at home. I have an endless hunger to explore the world. While I kept pushing toward worlds beyond what I knew, you stopped. Your abilities, your vision, your mindset, they stopped matching mine long ago. But I still chose to be with you. I even kept stepping back for your sake. That was because I loved you, and I kept holding on to this fantasy. If I gave you more chances to shine, maybe you'd open your eyes to the world again. But you let me down. That woman, she's nothing. I can't even remember her name, Megan or Melanie. All I recall is a lump of pale flesh from that recording. People like you two are so irrelevant, you're not even worth a thought. The only reason I agreed to meet you was because I still had a sliver of hope. I wanted to hear what you had to say at the very end. You were once that boy I loved, the one bursting with drive and a hunger for the future. I wanted to see a trace of that again. But you've disappointed me once more. After studying my mood, I looked him in the eye. If we go back to the example I gave earlier, the product I invested in is like the QR code. It's the future, tomorrow. Your company is like the old POS machine stuck in the past, destined to be abandoned by time. Adam, coming to me won't help you. Whether I lift a finger or not, your company will never go public. You're being crushed by the unstoppable wheel of time. At most, I just gave it a push. You didn't have to push, Adam rasped. If you hadn't, it wouldn't have happened so fast. I laughed. And why shouldn't I? Have I not told you before, don't let those snakes and clowns around you come anywhere near me? But not only did you fail to keep them in check, You came to me yourself." His face went ashen in an instant, clearly remembering that charity gala where he stomped on my dignity. "I trampled on your pride," he said bitterly. "You could have trampled on mine, but why?" His words broke off. Compared to the small bit of face I lost, what he's lost is far more real, far more severe. It could very well cost him the rest of his life. I smiled again. If revenge doesn't escalate, how can it be called revenge? His eyes widened, then his shoulders began to fold in on themselves, like a withered stalk of grass. Fate has its own justice. Adam has known me since we were young. He knows I never go looking for trouble. But if someone dares to step on me, my retaliation will be fierce, swift, and utterly without mercy. We had reached the end. There was nothing more to say. I stood, set my cup on the counter, and left without looking back at the man sitting there like rotting wood. My steps were steady, unhurried. Before coming here, I'd already heard plenty. Shareholders pressing Adam for accountability, Megan's mother's company collapsing, Megan demanding money from him and threatening divorce when she couldn't get it. His mother, anxious and powerless, had fallen ill and been hospitalized. His father, humiliated into serving meals on his knees, had fallen in the street and broken a bone. I'd heard it all, but none of it had anything to do with me. From the moment Adam became rigid and arrogant, holding his head so high that his ridiculous nose hair showed, our future was already gone. In-laws, third parties, those petty family squabbles are nothing but side effects. If I still loved Adam, I would naturally find a way to handle all of it. But I no longer love him. I don't love that man who stayed in place, head held high, only to show those ridiculous nose hairs. The phone rang. On the other end, a young voice said, "Olivia, my sister told me you started a new company. I was wondering if you need security guards." I smiled. "Quit New Era Tech and come work for me. But not as a guard, you'll be my assistant." The head of security at New Era Tech was a relative of Mrs. Chen. In his youth, he'd acted on impulse and fired a gun in a fight helping a friend, which landed him a criminal record. Though his time inside wasn't long, it still left a mark. Mrs. Chen's husband couldn't stand the idea of him working in his own company, so Mrs. Chen came to me. I saw the kid wasn't a bad person, so I arranged for him to start at New Era Tech as a security guard, and told him to study when he had free time so he wouldn't fall out of touch with society. He was truly motivated, working while studying for his exams, eventually becoming head of security. It was him who noticed Adam and Megan more than once on the surveillance cameras, kept an eye on them, and tipped me off. The reason I was able to get those recordings so smoothly later was also thanks to his help. I've always believed in sincerity and kindness, planting good seeds without demanding the harvest. Even with Adam, I never deliberately made things hard for him, and as expected, those to whom I showed kindness repaid me in kind. Heaven has its balance. Not long after I hung up, the phone rang again. This time it was Mrs. Chen, laughing heartily. "Olivia, you really made a killing this time. Even my husband is jealous of the profit on this project." I smiled. "A project that big burns a lot of money. How could I handle it alone? Fortunately, I have Jume Jixian and a whole circle of sisters and friends who, after years of seeing how I manage things, trust both my character and my vision." "Who says women can't achieve big things together?" She laughed. "That's because you've got a good eye, Olivia." I teased back. "And my good eye is in recognizing you, Mrs. Chen. Next time you have a project, however you say to invest, I'll follow." Her voice was brimming with joy. "Hurry over, the celebration banquet is waiting for you." "All right," I agreed, stepping forward. Ahead of me, sunlight spilled like shattered gold, draping me in brilliance. For a moment I felt as if I was the one radiating light.